Welcome to A Day with FMZ, and this is a global initiative to bring in the leadership series and also education series. And I welcome my co-host Lisa. And today we have Lisa Witted, who is also an expert in sustainability. And welcome you, Lisa.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
We're so
Over to
happy to
you.
have you. We'll try not to get too confused with the two Lisas. Lisa, you are engaged in a incredibly ever-changing part of facility management. We've seen tremendous numbers of employees that are leaving the traditional workforce, and we know the impacts of that on the worldwide labor shortages. You report that only 13% of worldwide employees are happy at work, which is a stunning or startling statistic. If an organization could only change one thing to improve that statistic, where would you tell them to focus their efforts?
And it's not just me who says this. It comes from the Gallup poll, who's been measuring people's engagement with work worldwide for more than 20 years. And when I learned the statistics several years ago, it just fired me up to say, wow, there must be so many things we can do differently. And the sad thing about that stat is that it has not changed. It's barely changed over all those years that Gallup's been measuring it. And frankly, we have one life. We spend the majority of it working. And to think that so many people are not engaged in their work, in their a meaningful part of their life, I just think there's a lot we can do. And there were actually, you asked for one, but there are three things that I would say an organization could be doing right now to make a difference on that employee engagement. First is holding listening sessions. Second is review how you're recruiting people. And third is train your managers. And I'll just quickly give a little highlight for each one of those. When I talk about listening sessions, I mean, go in, have a small focus group, and just ask them, what can we do to improve your experience here at work? It can be quick, it can be efficient, use technology to support people being able to share in an anonymous fashion and just listen to what they have to say. I did this with an organization recently, and the employees generated 130 different ideas, which were grouped into 6 themes. And then the organization sifted through and found the low-hanging fruit and said, hey, we can do this, this, and this. And importantly, they told their employees that these ideas came from them. And that's a really important loop to go back and let people know. Second, how are you recruiting? Now, here's the only bright spot that during the pandemic that I've read about workforce engagement, and that's that the number of disabled people have actually improved to the highest labor, according to the Department of Labor, the highest number ever since they've been measuring employment of people with disabilities. That's a bright spot. So what I am passionate about is the fact that we have people with disabilities that are invisible as well as visible. We often think, sight impaired or mobility impaired, but there are people on the spectrum. There are people with ADHD. There's many different neurodiversities out there. And if we look at how we're recruiting and stop thinking of a very narrow box of what's okay, what's neurotypical, and expand it, you're going to find some people that are really passionate and want to be working. They want to be of use. They're very well qualified folks. And then finally, training your managers. We know that there are 6 factors of high-performing teams. This is from the work of the Center for Evidence-Based Management along with AWA. And that research shows that one of the primary factors is my perceived supervisory support. So that means, do I feel supported by my manager? And if I do, I'm more likely to be engaged and be more productive in the work I'm doing. There has always been an opportunity to better train managers. Often they get into a space and they're just not supported to be high-performing coaches. And that's really what our managers need, even more so now than before.
That's awesome. The thing about the managers really rings true with me. I have had the benefit of really great managers most of my career, but there was a period in which I had a really not great manager. And so even taking apart, people say, well, a good worker is always going to be a good worker. A good worker who has a bad manager is not going to be able to succeed the way that they.
Oh, spot on. Yeah.
So, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think very well covered, Lisa. I think any organization has to look at from a perspective of employee engagement, building leadership and managers, understanding that how the leadership is also been pursued. In your book, Save the Planet, and I was also lucky to get your book from your hand, which was autographed. You mentioned that the Earth First workplace is good for people, great for business. You point out that even before the pandemic, many offices were underutilized and outdated. For the way we work today, from the perspective of a city manager who is struggling against demand to downsize the facilities and to improve efficiency, what is a good starting point for a discussion? Maybe talking about seven planet tents, if you think that's appropriate, maybe you can cover from your perspective. Uh,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one of the key things, we say we're trying to change the world of workplace one workplace at a time, or change the world of work one workplace at a time. And I got to say, it's got to be one conversation at a time, which seems like it's going to take us forever, but there's great value in that. So one of the first things is to have one-on-one conversations with your colleagues. So if you're an FM professional, reach out to your IT, HR, your other business leaders, and just schedule time, have a coffee, ask them what are their biggest challenges right now, and just listen to what they say. Take copious notes and just, build that relationship or strengthen it. You may already have great relationships. So let them know what you're trying to do, that really what you want to do is understand their challenges, because you believe you can bring them together to answer those challenges. And one of the key ways is with purpose, the purpose conversation, which is the first of my 7 tenets from my book. So when you can bring people together, have them share their challenges and recognize all the commonalities, then you can look at what you can do in your role to make that change, that employee engage. So here's the things I've been hearing: the focus on diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging. It is critical in so many organizations. The focus on sustainability and ESG and making a difference for climate change also tends to be right near the top. The challenge with recruitment and retention, there's your HR people with sleepless nights. So this is the opportunity. This is our golden moment that we were given because of the tragedy of the pandemic, but we have been given this moment in the world of facilities to really make a profound difference on all the things that are meaningful to business and definitely will impact their profitability, productivity, being a modern employer of choice. So that's the thing I say, is just have those conversations first and then listen and then work together to get to where you want to be.
That's great. Is there so you're talking about making changes in organizations that don't necessarily have a direct financial translation. So is there data that would help to make the case, the financial case, for that kind of transformative change against the competitive pressures of doing business? I'm thinking of, if I went to my IT for some of this change, they're going to say, we have this large organization to support, and we have 200 projects ahead of you. So is there some data that you can use to make that case?
Absolutely. And, one of the key things is recognizing that when they say that to you, we've got 200 people ahead of, 200 other projects ahead of you, simply say, I want to learn more because I'm interested in helping you solve for that. Okay. So always coming from how you can support their greatest challenge. When we come from that place of true service leadership and wanting to support others, then it's authentic. And chances are they'll open up a little bit. They'll be surprised. Really? You want to hear about my 200 challenges? Right. But as far as the data, the key first place to begin is operations and real estate. We know, all right? We know before the pandemic that spaces were underutilized 40 to 60% of the time, underutilization. Certainly with the pandemic, when we start to look at swipe card data and just, sensor data and all the other that's coming in, we know how underutilized space is. So that data right there, looking at those operating costs and real estate costs, you can slash by 75% to 50% It's really, it depends on the courage of the leaders. Often we'll share the data based on how the use is and then make a recommendation, and the leadership will sort of have an emotional reaction and say,
Right.
oh, that just seems too drastic, right? They just like, what? But when you can show them, one of the challenges is people showing up and feeling like there's no energy. It's just like going to a party with 3 other people when it was 100 were invited. It's sort of sad.
Right.
So the data, that's where I begin, is what we're most comfortable with in facilities, which is understanding space use. But then to apply the numbers to improved innovation and engagement. So again, Gallup poll is a great source for the engagement numbers and how that can impact profitability, productivity, and profitability. So you may have to do a little bit of sleuthing of your own to tie these strings together. But I'd say first have those conversations to hear what's the biggest concern with your colleagues, and then start to do some sleuthing to pull those numbers together. I wish I could say it's a formula and it's easy, but it's just not.
Right.
It's just not.
I like your first response too, to say, what are the things you're dealing with, and how does this fit?
Yeah. We had one client, a state government actually, that we're working with, that early in the engagement, we were sharing the results of our digital interview, the survey process, and did a bunch of workshops with employees, which again is one of our foundational tenets. One of my beliefs is we've got to have all voices heard in the process early on. And the client recognized that they could take those conversations and findings and begin their culture investigation. So it wasn't even originally part of our scope, but they saw what was coming up. And it was really exciting to me to see them say, hey, can you share more of that? We want to continue these culture conversations.
Right. Nice.
Just to add to that, Lisa, if you have to share from your experience, typically, you are a strong advocate of development of the circular economy. What aspects of that can FMs realistically implement today in their operation? Because I think we talk a lot of things today. We talk about net zero carbon neutrality, but unless we don't translate that into actions and implement them, I think it only results in theory. So, what is that you are going to advocate? What is that realistically they can implement?
Yeah. First, education. So many people don't know what circular economy is. It's a newer phrase. So first is awareness and education. So I'll do that right here. Circular economy is doing everything we can to keep things from going to the landfill. And why we would be motivated to do that is because landfills create methane. And we often aren't talking about carbon emissions and worrying about embodied and operational carbon. But the fact is, landfills with methane is 25 times more damaging than carbon to our climate. So it really makes sense to focus on keeping things out of the landfill. We also know the amount of construction debris from tenant fit up, demolition debris, furniture that goes into the landfill is huge. I think in the US, it's literally millions. I meant to grab that number. Maybe we can put it in the footnotes for the show. But the percentage of furniture that is recycled, we think, oh, well, it's recycled or recycled content. It is 0.03% annually. That's a US statistic, but 0.03% is recycled. Oh my God, there's so much we can do there. So much.
And people think they're recycling.
Yes. Oh, yeah. We I didn't even start to talk about plastics. For sure. So first is education and awareness, and then get curious about your own organization. How do we discard things? What are we doing? What can we do to keep furniture in place longer? What happens when it's broken? What other materials, lighting, flooring, finishes, mechanical controls, what happens to them at the end of their life? So I always say, put on your little sleuth cap. Just be curious. Just be curious. So understand your current state of what's going on. And then your next conversation, your procurement group, your procurement professional, find out how they're doing it. Strengthen those relationships. You want to come from a place of trust, not questioning, so they don't feel threatened or targeted. You really just want to understand. And chances are, in their world of procurement, this conversation about circularity is happening. So they may have some great stuff to share with you as well. And you might find an ally that you didn't expect there. And then finally, at the top of the pyramid is policy change. So once you're really into it and you really want to make, all right, what can we do, to put the onus on manufacturers so they're the ones responsible for take back and making sure things don't go to the landfill. But always begin, and then even go more micro, begin at home. What can I do in my own life to eliminate or reduce food waste, consumerism, secondhand goods, minimalism. So there's many things we can do to get into the circular way of being.
Thank you, Lisa. I think if you look at, I think you're covered from point of first thing is to bring awareness. I think awareness is very, very important and educate them. And as it is a new concept, I think it's very important for, I think a lot of companies has to come together now today. I think this will, circular economy is also going to help us in not just reducing the usage of the materials, but also helping in contributing to the net zero and also carbon emission. Um,
Yeah.
and training people is very, very important. I think the first question you covered about employee engagement, listen to them. I think once we start listening, we understand what they expect from us. I think, and why does a facility go underutilized or outdated is basically when we don't understand and won't, when you don't keep up to what the needs of today, right? So it may be a best facility for a need of yesterday, but not for today. I think we always need to be on our toes to look at what next and what is the future requirement. And it's been a great conversation, Lisa. Thank you so much. And Lisa, you want to add anything?
I just was thinking about the policy piece because as sort of the average user, when I do a project that's going to impact furniture, I'm looking for the tools. So I think the world is looking for that solution and how to get started. So the policy part, if an organization says up front, it's your job to do this.
Yeah.
I think it's also a top-down approach, and everybody knows that. And it also demonstrates that leadership is very focused on doing certain things when the
Right.
policy is made.
Right.
It also binds the management team, other decision makers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's a both top down and bottom up because, over just about a year ago, we started working with a client and talked about circularity. She Googled it and she's a facility professional certified. She hardly anything came up. And then just a few months ago, she Googled and was amazed at how many more things that come. So I think it's because we're talking about it more and we need to continue to do that. And leaders need to be made aware that this is a priority.
Right.
One last thing I'll just say on the listening sessions, you can also sneak in a little education because I always think about what Henry Ford said. If he asked people what they wanted, I don't know if it was him or somebody else, but the answer was more horses because they couldn't imagine a car engine. So we want to remember people are operating from what they know, which is fine. But if we have a chance to share a little bit just to open some more awareness, that will help us all move forward.
That's awesome. Thank you. I love your enthusiasm. We're going to have to chat more. Thank you so much.
I think
I'm delighted. Thank you.
We should do one more session with Lisa. Thank you, Lisa, for joining us, and thank you all for keep watching us. And if you have any specific topics to cover, please write to us. Thank you.